So, is it possible that the Egyptians did record the Earth changing the direction of its spinning? Um, because in histories, Herodotus does talk about that. It does mention as part of explaining the the kings who had ruled over time. So um, he tells us that in total there had been about 330 monarchs since the beginning of the kingdom of Egypt that he found when he went there. So there were that number of kings and queens who had ruled. And he says of these 330, in fact, there are 331 because he mentioned the number of 330 as the kings who and queens who came after the first king, Min. And then he tells us that of these, 18 were Ethiopians. And then one was a queen who it's like, it's possible she was Babylonian. I don't know how she ended up in Egypt. Herodotus doesn't give us much detail about it except the fact that she ruled after her brother was killed, who was a king. Now, that there's something that's not making sense there. But he says she carries the same name as one of the queens who ruled over Babylon. Nitocris was her name. And once she became the queen, she decided to avenge her brother. And she organized a huge party. She invited many people. Or it seems like most of the people conspired to kill her brother. And then she invited them to some kind of an underground kind of place, and then she released water, and then she drowned them. Anyway, so this video is about whether Egyptians did record the Earth changing its spinning direction, so that the sun is rising from the east, then it starts rising from the west, and then it starts rising from the east and west. This is a topic that interests some people, and in fact, I think it's in Islam where I think it's the Quran that mentions that during the end times, the sun will be rising from the west, something like that. Like it will be one of those signs to watch out for, to know that the world is coming to an end. Anyways, but in scientific talk, it's kind of like something possible, because I think it's Venus that moves in the opposite direction. So that if you are on Venus, then the sun rises from the west and it sets in the east. There has not been any concrete evidence to just suggest that it has happened in the past that the sun was rising from the west, then it went to the east. But now Herodotus goes to Egypt and he's talking to these priests at the temple, and the priests in Egypt were like the custodians of knowledge. And Herodotus does tell us one thing that he was impressed about Egyptians is how they kept their records. Like, they were so good at keeping records. They kept a record of every event that happened. And so when he went to the temple, in fact, it does say that they showed him some of the records, and some of the records went as far back as the first king, Min. So they had records going that far back. Now, the far back they helped him calculate by giving him the names of the kings who ruled, and in fact, they did give him highlights of some of the kings, especially those ones that did things that were notable, like building a huge pyramid or going to war and conquering foreign land. So those ones had very detailed history, and others was just names mentioned because they did not do anything worthy. So he calculates, with the help of these priests, after determining the number of monarchs that had ruled Egypt, and that came to, as I mentioned, 331. I need to clarify this. This is a number that up to that moment when the Herodotus went to Egypt, which was like 400 BCE, which is like 2,500 years ago. So, and the calculations came to like the entire period Egypt had been around. That kingdom was 11,000 and something, 11,340 years that the kingdom had been around, and they had been keeping records. Now, the priest told him, or they showed him some data that says that in that period of 11,340 years, the sun had changed the direction from where it rises 4 times. So it started by rising from the west and setting in the east. Then after maybe several thousand years, it changed from rising from the east, it went back to the west, and then it changed from the west, it went back to the east. Okay, it says 4 times, so maybe I'm wrong in the way but you get the point. Like at 4 times the sun changed where it was rising from. So that means the earth kind of changed its rotation or spinning direction. And looking at some information here and there, you get the impression that if that were to happen, then there will be chaos. In fact, the civilizations will be wiped out. I was reading one article says that if that happened, because the force of inertia, everything will be demolished. There will be hurricanes, and oceans will flow over land, and there will be, in short, there will be a lot of destruction. But then I looked at another one saying that it depends on how that will happen. If it happens slowly, then nothing will really change, except maybe some climatical change that might happen. Maybe some parts that are desert today might change to be rainy forest, something like that. So Herodotus puts down this note. He says Egypt was in no degree affected by these changes. The production of the land and of the river remained the same, nor was there anything unusual either in disease or in the deaths, or the deaths. So it's basically saying, while the priest told him, while this happened, or while this had happened 4 times in a period of 11,000 years, there was no major impact on the well-being of the kingdom. Now, maybe their records were accurate, and indeed at some point in the past, the earth has spun to the opposite direction to what we know today. Or maybe it's a story like many ancient stories have mythical backgrounds, and sometimes they come to be held to be true while they are not. We will never know about that. We can also not say for sure that it did not happen. 11,000 years is a very long time. Anything is possible. And we don't have a continuous record of things that have been happening for that long, especially now. Maybe the Egyptians had that, but at the moment we basically don't. Maybe we can go back maybe 2,000 years, and it's not like it's so detailed records, just snippets. So we can't for sure say no, it did not happen, or yes, it happened. But yes, Herodotus does mention that the priests at the temple told him about this, and they also kind of showed him some records, especially relating to the kings and queens who were ruling throughout this period of 11,300 years.